Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to CC's Two Cents Worth. I am so excited that you came to share with me on today. I'm excited about this new venture in life, something new that I'm doing. I wanted to use my voice for positive in my community. So I am very excited about the opportunity to do that. Many of you follow me on Facebook. And I put these extremely long posts out there. It take you about 10 minutes to read, but everyone decides to read it, and we have amazing conversation. And I just wanted to continue the conversation with some of the brilliant people that I know personally and that have reached out to me via my Facebook page. So today I have joining me one of the most baddest, brilliant sisters that I know. I love her so much, and I am so biased. Anyone can tell you when it comes to even saying her name, I am so biased because she epitomizes the strength, the integrity, the intelligence of um, of a strong Black woman. And I am appreciative of the example that she sets in just being who she authentically is. So I was so excited when I came up with this venture to say, "Oh my God, I can't wait to have Regina on the show." And then all of this stuff began to happen, and then it came to me. This is why I had to have Regina on the show. Um, and so I'm so excited that with me today is my sister, Regina Hurte. She is a practicing attorney. And how many states?
One for now. We're working on a couple
Okay.
others.
Okay. She's a practicing attorney. She is sharp. She is on point. And in light of everything that took place within the last couple of days, and as you all can see, um, the title is I Can't Breathe. And this has become, uh, I'm looking for a good word to put here. This has become an all too common refrain
Mhm.
within the African American community. And we have seen in more than one instance where African Americans have been publicly lynched by horrific acting officers. Now, I want to stop right there and put this caveat there. I know some amazing police officers that would give the shirt off their back.
Yeah.
I've seen officers, and I know officers that go in their pockets to be a
Yes.
blessing to others, and no one will ever see what they do because they do it because they love people, they love their job, and this is something that they pledged their life to. So we're not going to group every officer in the same group as these horrific officers. But the reality is that these horrific officers, more times than not, get more attention
Yes.
than the ones who are doing their job. So
Absolutely.
I wanted to talk about this incident that took place, which is an all too familiar refrain in the African American community, where we are being stopped, we are being disrespected, we are being killed at a disproportionate rate to others. And it's not to
Mhm.
say that it doesn't happen with others and in other communities, but it is happening and it's very prevalent in ours. And I am absolutely livid at how this is impacting our community and how we see so much going on with the riots and everything last night. Oh my gosh. A CNN anchor who was actually arrested while doing his job, an African American anchor was arrested while
Mhm.
doing his job. And then add to this that in a time of discord and a time when the cool minds of leadership should prevail, and leadership should be setting the tone for uh, right relations and reconciliation, or at least setting the tone for conversation, is actually incentivizing and
Right.
exciting people um, to write. I could not believe. At first, I thought the tweet was fake. If they start looting, start shooting. and I was livid. I could not believe that a sitting president
Alleged.
would
Alleged president.
would even type something like that. Now, here's a legal question
Mhm.
that I want you to address um after you talk a little bit about who you are. Um, if I go into a crowded movie theater and I start yelling fire, isn't that inciting can I be charged with that for inciting a riot? So what's the difference between him inciting and all of these things that he's been saying and doing
Mhm.
and me going into a movie theater and doing that? So
Right. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. My sister, let me tell you, I am so overwhelmed by your love and your grace towards me, but I
always.
must say that birds of a feather fly together, my love. And so to you, who is so
Oh,
strong and so wonderful and so loving and so precious to our community, I applaud you for this new venture and
thank
I thank
you.
you for caring about your people and your community, all people and all communities enough to put this type of format out there. As far as me, yes, am a licensed Virginia attorney. Have been, good Lord, for a long time now. um, having had
Wait a
some
minute, hold
experience.
on, not that long, because we ain't that old now. Well, be real careful with that.
Listen, no matter how long, PYT all the time. Um,
Okay.
so I have had the unique experience. I feel like it's unique anyway to have been not only a public defender, but also to have been an assistant Commonwealth attorney in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So to have, represented the people and represented those folks who, find themselves on the wrong side of charges of the law, etc. And so, yes, you are absolutely right. If you were to go into a movie theater and begin to yell and people begin to rush out based on that false report, and someone is injured, someone is harmed, absolutely, you could be held responsible for that. You could be charged, and there are a couple different things that you could be charged with, but yes, you could be charged with something. And so I completely and totally understand that rationale of how is it that folks are able to do pretty much what they want to do, to use those dog whistles as they have been using so frequently here lately in public, not just using them within their own communities or their own spaces, but using them in public forums over public airways to encourage other folks to do things that are going to be harmful to the personages of others. So that is a question that I can't answer for you. A lot of folks will say, well, because we have free speech, and as long as that speech is not falling into the lines of action, then that becomes, protected speech. Um, you know, in this particular instance, I don't know that that's enough because I do think that this speech, at the very least, is inciting other folks' actions, is
Hmm. Hmm.
licensing other folks' actions, which are criminal in and of themselves. Okay. So yeah, I think that there is certainly some value to having that discussion of when is enough? When have we reached the line?
When have we reached the line? So here's another question. And I was watching the governor this morning on television, and he was talking about how this militia group has posted up outside of his home, and he said that because he didn't want to expose his children to that, and he's being very conscientious of even his movement, and we've
Mhm,
seen this play out, that that are out there attempting to be intimidating
mhm.
by carrying weapons and things of that nature. And we see them out on the street. And listen, I am a fan of the Second Amendment.
Mhm, mhm. Me too.
I'm a fan.
Mhm,
I'm a fan, and I have posted pictures before of me out at the range doing what I
mhm,
do.
mhm,
So I am a fan of it. But I am now challenged with this open display of defiance and nothing is being done. And let's juxtapose this to African American community. If there was an instance where we were out on the street and we Black Panther movement, perfect
Yeah.
example,
Yeah.
2020, if we were out
Mhm.
here on the street and we had weapons, we would be considered a threat. Hell, our color is considered a threat. And let me just
Exactly.
put this disclaimer. Let me just put this disclaimer out for people. I'm so angry right now. I'm going to cuss a little bit because they are my adjectives that I will use to describe how I feel. If you are offended by that, then go ahead and click off, because I
Right.
I, I am so raw with pain and emotion right now that I'm just, I struggle to be politically correct in my presentation.
Yeah.
So with that being said, what is the difference? I mean, do people not see that there's a difference? If I and all of my friends decided that we were going to strap up, it would be chaos.
It is. It would. Because especially in the Commonwealth of Virginia, the laws do require that if you're going to carry a concealed weapon, you must
Hmm.
have a permit. However, there is no preventer from carrying open. That's why you see these individuals who are riding around in their trucks with their gun racks in the back windows, things of that nature. We have had on at the General Assembly, and I find it very ironic that it's usually on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, that is also the gun lobby day. And so there are folks who are able to come on the
Wow.
Capitol grounds and into the Capitol buildings, and they have their weapons. However, as we've already seen, that young brother that was in the Walmart where they sell the guns, and he had the weapon in the Walmart where he presumably was planning to purchase it or interact with it in some way, shape, or form, he, within seconds of officers coming in contact with him with no question, with no rhyme, with no reason, with no additional information, he's gunned down. And
Right.
so, yes, I think there is a huge distinction to be made. And I know on social media, lots of those pictures have been going around where you have these protesters who are yelling and screaming in the officers' faces, some of them armed, who are very aggressive, who are very
Right.
agitated,
Right. Very.
and there's no response. These officers are as,
None.
stoic as they are at London Tower or whatever that castle is over there in
Yeah.
London, where they don't move or don't do anything. However, we read, we sleep, we walk, we birdwatch, we, breathe, live, bat an eye.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, we are somehow deemed as targets in this instance. And I think that is just a continuing ode to the fact that a lot of the dominant culture, or the white dominated culture, has indicated that Black and brown bodies are, one, to be feared,
Hmm.
and two, dispensable. And
That's
so,
dispensable. That's a
yeah.
that word right there.
Mhm.
Dispensable.
Mhm. Mhm. And this is something that is significantly ingrained in this culture of the United States. This is why, how many years later are we still talking about Emmett Till, and the obvious admission that the allegations that were brought against him were false and were fake. Now, clearly, all those years later, it does not prevent or stop or reverse the fact that that 14-year-old at the time was beaten, bludgeoned, shot in the head, and left mutilated for the world to see, all based on the word of one individual.
One.
He
Okay.
was
So this
not
kind of this kind of walks us into where I want to be, because that was one individual, and
Mhm,
look at what we're dealing with years later,
right.
where his mom was
Yes.
still emoting over what happened to her child. And
Yeah.
I will say this, that I went to the Black History Museum in Washington, and I couldn't even bring myself to go in the room
Mhm.
because it was so raw and so real.
Yeah.
So that kind of walks us into where we are, because Ahmaud Arbery,
Mhm.
um, I watched in horror. I watched in horror
Mhm.
how they chased this young man down and shot him in the street. And this is what pissed me the hell off. This is what pissed me off. We can have um commercials on television that go on for hours, and
Mhm.
and I'm being dramatic there, but beyond the normal 30 minutes, about being cruel to animals. But we have not yet put anything up about the cruelty that is being inflicted upon the African American community. This young man was out jogging. He was out jogging, and even if he had entered into the house, which would at most would have been a trespassing charge, which would have had to been pressed by the owner of the property. Uh,
Mhm.
correct?
Depending on how we got there, potentially. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
potentially. But the owner of the property abstained from it. He had the equipment there. He knew people were walking in and out of his house. And honestly and truthfully, there have been times that I have gone in and looked at, formats of new houses and things of that nature. So that's
Mhm.
nothing, nothing that's not normally done. But I
Right.
watched the video, and I watched it because I felt that I needed to watch it. So let me put a caveat there. Everybody may not be able to handle it. So if you know your limits, don't watch
Right.
it.
Right.
But I watched it, and I tears just rolled down my face. And then I had the nerve to watch the video of George Floyd, and the anger that I felt at the blatant disregard for human life, for Mr. Floyd's life, for
Mhm.
Mr. Floyd's African American male life,
Mhm.
took me to another level of anger.
Yeah.
Because and you could talk about the legalities of this, but some of the first things that I notice in my profession is posture.
Mhm.
So the posture of the officer, that was purportedly watching the people was like, y'all better not move, or
Mhm.
you can be the next one. The
Mhm.
officer with his hands in his pocket and his knee on this man's neck.
Right.
And then the other officers that are holding him. And one of the things that I was thinking about and I was saying was that this man was deprived of oxygen,
Mhm.
which caused him to begin to hallucinate when he started calling out to his mom. And
Mhm.
there was such a flagrant, defiant act of disrespect that no one intervened. And as a result, we have everything that's happening in our world right now. And
Right.
they are burning that damn city down
Yeah.
because people are angry,
Yeah.
they are upset, and they are
Mhm.
responding. And I
Mhm.
and I will say this because I do have a question in here. As an African American woman, I am so sick and tired of whenever you want to articulate how you feel, someone wants to monitor that.
Right.
Oh, you're the angry black woman, or,
Right.
and the microaggressions that women deal with all the time when we begin to articulate who we are with understanding, with power, with authority. People are intimidated by that. And I understand the concept of what they're doing because they need to have their voice heard.
Mhm.
And so and we talked about this earlier, can you explain what the delay is between the time that I watched the life of an African American male leave his body to the time this morning at 10:18 a.m. and no charges have been filed against those officers? Can you help me understand that process so I don't throw my phone or something?
Well, I want you to not throw your phone.
I'm
But I
gonna
don't
keep
know
my
that
phone.
I can explain that process. I don't know that there's an explanation to be had, to be perfectly honest. What I can say is that generally, if an officer, any officer, and I understand that this is in Minnesota, each state has their different laws and their different mannerisms and their different policies and procedures. However, in the Commonwealth of Virginia, if an officer is watching someone commit an offense, that officer is entitled to immediately take that individual into custody and arrest them for whatever said offense might be. Much like when an officer sees you speeding, he can immediately interact with you and stop you and interact with you and issue you the citation or whatever that is. We've had examples where people have watched, where officers have been in the vicinity or seen um, where individuals have been in the process of killing another individual. And yes, automatically that officer is to stop and to one, try to intervene, And two, then they are able to then arrest that actor, whoever that person is who's in the middle of committing whatever the offense is. My concern is that there were several officers who were
Yes.
there, who were watching this take place. And again, understood that this is in a different jurisdiction. However, the normal protocols would allow an officer who is watching a crime be committed intercede immediately to rectify that crime, stop that crime, and then also take the perpetrator into custody. That is not what has happened here.
So let
And
me
as
ask
I've
you a question.
mhm,
And it's along those lines.
mhm,
If Cece and Regina are together and Cece decides that she's going to steal something and put it down in her purse, and then
mhm,
Cece and Regina walk out the store together, even though Regina may not have known that Cece stole something, what
mhm,
is the rule on being an accessory before and after the fact? Because it seems like they are complicit and an
mhm,
accessory to the
mhm.
murder of Mr. Floyd.
Right. If I don't know anything as we're walking out of the store, either before we went into the store that that was the plan, or as we're walking out of the store and you have the item, then I don't necessarily hold any responsibility. However, you can best
Mhm.
believe that 9 times out of 10, there is going to, again, be that thought of birds of a feather. And so if you
Yes,
did, then she must have. And if she didn't, then she must have known and somehow helped you.
right.
These folks knew. I
These folks
can't
knew.
come to any other conclusion. No, I'm not in. I wasn't there, didn't see it take place. But I definitely feel like we have enough video footage
Yeah.
that we can start the process here. We've had lots of processes. I have defended and prosecuted cases in which arrest now, we'll figure it out down the line. They have enough processes and procedures in place that if indeed something comes out that shows that there should not be any action taken, I don't know what that would be or how that would happen, but if that happens, there are enough processes and procedures in the legal system that can rectify those issues. How many times have we had individuals who have been held in custody, then they're released on bond because something else has come out, and then the cases are, null prost, as we call it in Virginia, or somehow dismissed, otherwise dropped, etc. Those processes exist. And so yes, the general thought of the legal system is that you would rather um 10 guilty folks get away to avoid falsely incarcerating one person, but that is at least giving that person an individual an opportunity to be heard, to be seen.
To be
Where
heard
do these things come in where the individual is never given a chance at all?
at all. I mean, justice
I.e.,
is in their eyes executed
exactly.
right there. So I want to and I wanted this to be interactive. So I want to put up a comment. Let me see if it comes up. It's yeah, okay, there it is.
Mhm,
And this was a comment by Benita Matthews, and she said the officers took an oath to defend and protect, which
mhm,
appears to be absolutely nothing.
mhm,
What
mhm.
can you say to Benita? Because I feel like she's correct. You're
Absolutely.
correct.
And like we said in the beginning, this certainly does not apply to all law enforcement officers by any means. But also,
Mhm.
as you said in the beginning, it's these ones who are doing the things that are well out of bounds that are getting the
Yes.
most attention. It's the same way with any media thing. You see how many students or who are graduating. Yeah, maybe you got some more, uh, you know, publication because this is 2020 and it's coronavirus and people can't graduate, but in a general graduation season you get a quick blip about all these hundreds of thousands of students who have done exactly what it is that they're supposed to do, gone to school, gotten their education, and now they're ready to go into their adult lives with their diplomas. But how many stories daily do we see about the students who maybe made those mistakes, who made the wrong decisions, whose upbringing have put them in a space where they have committed different offenses? We see those repeatedly every day.
Hmm. Every
And
day.
so it's the same type of thing where these folks who were doing the wrong things get all of the press and all of the hype. Yes, the officers did take that oath, and they are to protect and serve. And I will say that I feel pretty comfortable in saying that the majority, at least all the ones I know, they hold that up. But the
Mhm.
issue comes when you get folks who, like we previously said, already have this predisposition to the thought that Black and brown bodies are dispensable. Then you add that piece where you have an alleged president who's saying, don't worry about hurting people when you're arresting them.
Yes, I was going to bring that
You
up.
you have, the history that we've seen where even if officers are brought up on charges, many of them are dismissed. Or I've experienced the opposite, where a prosecutor does bring an officer up on charges, and then immediately that prosecutor becomes the target of
Right.
disdain and, threats and anger. And
We
so,
just saw that play out. We just saw that play out. Let me pause us right here because
mhm,
Dana said, sadly, they think they are above the law because they feel as if they are the law, and this is why they need to be held accountable. And I love what Dana said because not too long ago we saw, and that's why I wanted to put this comment up. What you were
mhm,
saying, where the police, what was it? They were saying that you need to get on board with one of the judges
mhm,
who was not in favor and was trying to rule equitably in his cases, and because the officers union did
mhm,
not feel as if he was defending them, or yeah, that they put this out against the judge in an attempt to intimidate and influence what's happening in that, even with
mhm.
the good officer or the good
Yeah.
judges.
Right, right, right. So yeah, that's what it sounds like. That's what it looks like. That's what appears to be playing out. That when you get these folks who have these predispositions and then they get a badge on top of it and they feel like they have some
Yeah.
form of authority, I think that's where the powder keg lies in that space. Um, and yes, you're absolutely right. I don't care who you are. If you are a citizen of this country, or if you're present in this country and you are doing something that is against the laws of this country, then yes, you need to be accountable. We've seen it. Officers have been driving under the influences. Officers have,
Yes.
been accused of, whatever racketeering, whatever corruption, whatever, abuses, domestic or otherwise. And we've seen that officers have been held accountable. I don't understand why this seems to fall in a different category. And the only thing that I can attribute that to is again the fact that it is ingrained in this country's collective conscience that Black and brown folks are immediately a threat and that they are immediately disposable, dispensable, and do not have the same amount of value. Kind of going back to what
So
you said about the dog thing, everybody equates a dog to being a man's best friend. But it seems as if the country has difficulty, unless you're an entertainer or a ball player, the country seems to have
uh,
difficulty equating the fact that Black folks, brown folks also have independent value.
I'm gonna just throw this in, and then I want to go back to what's on here because people are leaving comments. But Ice Cube, I love Ice Cube. Ice Cube was scheduled to be on Good Morning America, and Ice
Mhm,
Cube was like, I don't feel like saying good morning. And he posted a picture with an axe in his hand because I don't feel like those who have a voice, whether they are in the entertainment community, whether they are in the clergy community,
mhm,
whether they are in the finance community, are speaking out enough about the injustices that they see. And I
mhm,
heard Van Jones say earlier while he was on CNN, he was like, it's you have to face it, you have to deal with it, and you cannot say, I'm colorblind or I don't see this, because it's
right,
happening and you
right.
have to address it when it happens. And
Mhm,
so talk about throwing the law out the window and just murdering people on the street because of what we presume they've done.
mhm,
We have another one here, and Duran said that he was accused of writing a bad check.
mhm,
That was the accusation. So
right.
can you tell us what happens when, or what is supposed to happen? And then my question is, How did this store owner perceive that this was a bad check? You know, where
Yeah.
help
Yeah.
me understand that.
My understanding of it is that the uh, customer service person, whoever was at the counter, was supposedly saying it was either a bad check or a counterfeit bill, either way. Um, and even they were horrified once they called the police, and then they saw the interactions of the police. My understanding is that counter person called the owner and said, oh my God, they're killing him. Um, are laws on the books in the Commonwealth of Virginia that indicate that you are only supposed to use as much force as is being utilized on you. So,
Hmm.
if you have a barn of some sort or your home and you're not home and people are trying to take things out of your front yard, you're not allowed to use lethal force. You can confront them,
Hmm.
but you're not allowed to use lethal force. If you were to utilize lethal force to protect property, that will still subject you to some form of homicide charge.
Wow.
So, again, we have here utilization of what turned out to be lethal force. And again, I think the timing of it all, if it was for, 10 seconds until he was on the ground and handcuffed, maybe, maybe. But when we have, I believe we're at 9 minutes now, I think is what was happening, or the length of
Yeah.
time that this officer had his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck while Mr. Floyd was, one, handcuffed, two, on the ground, three, on prone on the ground. And
Hmm.
there were a significant number of other officers who were in the space as well, that if there had been any concern for his safety, certainly could have jumped in and activated at that point in time. Um, so yeah, there's nothing that I can give you that would justify any of that,
We have
or make
nothing.
it right, or make it seem much more appropriate, um, because of the circumstances. I think as you continue to look in the circumstances, one, like the comment said, this was simply a forgery or a counterfeit, whatever that looks like, not entitled to use lethal force. Two, he's
And
already in handcuffs. Three, he's already on the ground. Four, he's prone on the ground. Five, there are other officers. Six, he's unarmed, as far as I know.
right.
Seven, he's begging for his life. He's saying that he can't. He's trying to utilize his voice. And I've seen the video. Maybe I missed it. Have not seen a space. I don't understand how we go from stepping out of the car, being placed in handcuffs, to then ending up on the ground. That's a space that I'm lost in. I know there are several different angles that have, recently come out. And I will be honest with you, I watched it the first time and I was much like you, enraged, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't do it anymore. And so maybe there's an angle that shows that I simply have not seen. But again, if we have someone who's already in handcuffs and they are already contained, how do we go from walking them from their vehicle to the police vehicle, and now all of a sudden he's on the ground with a knee in his neck? I don't know how we get there.
I don't understand that either. And at worst, okay, at best, passing a bad check is a civil issue, which normally people will take you to small claims court and get their money
Mhm,
back. But at worst, a criminal issue where you can be charged based on the amount of the check with either
mhm,
a misdemeanor or felony.
mhm.
Nowhere in any of that do I see a death sentence.
No.
Even when it came to if it was a forged bill that he
Mhm,
was attempting to pass,
mhm.
that would be something that would be investigated by Secret Service, based not Secret Service,
FBI.
Treasury. Yeah,
Mhm,
Treasury and
mhm,
FBI,
mhm,
because that's a fraudulent tool.
mhm.
But even in the administration of justice, as it relates to that, I have never seen it end in a death sentence. I haven't. All right, so we have a comment here.
Mhm.
Um, and this one is by Keenan. I think we know him. Keenan
Okay.
says, if the local DA in Minnesota doesn't bring charges, can the FBI bring charges, or are they just there to oversee?
The Department of Justice.
The
Right.
under bar, right?
Right. Exactly.
Okay. I just want to be
Would
clear.
that one would be the entity to actually bring the charges. So the FBI are just like the police, basically, and the Department of Justice is the federal prosecutor's office, basically. So that's how that would have to go. I don't hold out any great hope that that would be something that would take place. It can, because there are also federal civil rights, so under the U.S. Code, federal civil rights statutes,
Yes.
in addition to criminal statutes that exist in those spaces. But again, I don't necessarily hold out any great hope based on who now is in alleged leadership in those spaces, that any of those types of things, that although they are feasible and possible, are going to happen.
Unbelievable. And when we talk about civil rights, I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and I
Mhm,
said, don't get this twisted. The ultimate seat of power is not housed in the office of the president,
mhm,
it is actually housed in the Supreme Court.
mhm,
And so, as it relates to our civil rights and the
mhm,
rights that we have enjoyed for so long, the reality is that if that court is now stacked
mhm,
with persons who think, feel, and behave in alignment to what we see now in a lot of areas, not in all areas, but in a lot of areas of our legal system,
mhm,
and in instances where we have ill prepared judges sitting on benches with no experience to oversee the cases um, that they are reviewing,
mhm,
and they have implicit bias um, in that area. We see this. How do we, you know, how do we address that? Because the seat of power is not the figurehead of 1600.
right.
It is the Supreme Court of the United States,
Mhm,
where the judges will make decisions about all of these civil rights issues and everything else. And I shared with the person the other day, I said, this is where it hits the fan.
mhm,
Because if that justice body is now stacked with
yeah,
people who
yeah.
have implicit biases against black and brown people,
Mhm,
where they think it's okay to hold people in cages, where they think
mhm,
it's okay to kill people on the street, where
mhm,
they think it's okay to prosecute the LGBTQ community because who they choose to love,
mhm,
if they think it's okay to tell a woman what she should do with her body. And we already see this where judges are telling women to keep their legs shut. Who in the hell says something that ignorant?
right.
I'm confused by that. But I say that to say that all of the rights that we have fought so hard for
Mhm,
are now on the potential chopping block if we do not realign our entire government. And you started with that when you said our justice system. If we do not realign our entire government with the basic values
yeah,
that
yeah.
appreciate all of human life, not
Mhm.
just those that we agree with, but all human life. So talk
Or those
about,
that can pay for
the
it.
legal system. Although,
It's just a thing. So I know
talk
that
about that.
this probably will seem like an unsatisfactory answer for folks who are as livid and frustrated and upset as we are.
Okay.
But we honestly, legitimately, necessarily must be involved in the political process. Have to. There is never a space in which it is okay to say, well, I don't really like either of them, so I'm just not going to. And I get it. I get it 1,000%. But we do have to make some decisions as to everybody has things we don't like. Everybody has stances we don't agree with. Everyone could have done something better as it relates to how we think about it or how it could have been impactful or this, that, and the third. Everybody could have done something differently 35 years ago before they knew what they know now, and maybe they would make a different decision now. All those things are speculative, but I think they're all true of every candidate you're going to come across. But the bottom line in this is right now, and this is my opinion. I'm not even going to put this as one of Cece's 2 cents. This is G's 2 cents. All these
Come on
opinions are
here.
my own. Compared to comparing the two options that we are apparently going to have come November. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but based on what it looks like right now, we are literally making a decision of between someone who, yeah, has not always gotten it right, who's not always said the right things, who has not always been super tactful, who, maybe made some bad choices that have had some negative impacts on our communities. True. That versus someone who obviously just doesn't give a damn about anyone who is not rich, white, or male. We are talking about someone who right now, knowing that the COVID-19 has so very disparately impacted communities of color, communities who are indigent, communities who are much more dense, which tend to be comprised of Black and Brown folk. Knowing that COVID-19 has impacted those particular communities so desperately, he is then saying, well, we need to open up church. We need to open up the hair salon.
Ah,
We need to open
yeah.
up, and it needs to be done right now. The meat packing plants need to be essential because I need to have my steak. Sir, listen, what you're not going to do is think that you're hiding these things and couching these things in terms that Black and Brown folk don't understand. You know how critical church is to Black and Brown folk. We know that. But
Hmm.
let's also not get it twisted. The church is in the people. And so
Right.
that building, that can stay there. It'll be fine. But the
Fine.
church still executes and does what it is supposed to do. You want to talk about, the meat packing. Okay, yeah, maybe I would like my chicken breast or my steak or whatever that
Right.
looks like. But am I wanting to have that as it relates to the chance for someone else to lose their life? I'll pass. I'll be a vegan for a day.
I pass.
I'll be a
I
vegan
know you're
for a
right.
year. It's fine. We can make that happen. And so when you're trying to couch these terms and use these dog whistles, um, trying to make it seem as though you're doing something for the benefit of the country, you're a liar.
A liar.
And what you are doing is making life extraordinarily difficult for those who life is already extraordinarily difficult for.
Hmm. Hmm.
Nobody chooses to be a Black and or brown person in this country. They want to talk about, oh, go back to Africa. Well, had you left me over there where I was.
Let's stop right that part right there, because the this nation was built on the backs, the blood, the sweat, the tears of people who were brought to a place that they never desired to be.
And then you killed
Because,
us when we tried to get away.
and okay, so let's talk about that, because the history of our African American people has not been told enough, and that
Mhm,
I'm gonna, that's a whole nother story for another day, because I do have someone that I want to bring on to even discuss that.
mhm,
But it, with COVID-19, and this was the question I was going to ask you, a legal question,
mhm,
we see the timeline of when it hit over in China,
mhm.
when it hit, and I'm absolutely livid that we're placing blame on a virus,
Right.
on a people. How do
Mhm.
you blame a person for getting sick? That's like blaming someone who has cancer or blaming someone who has a heart attack. There are things that you can be considerate of to keep your body healthy. I get that. But nobody chooses to get sick with something that can kill them. That's
Mhm.
just ridiculous. But I'm getting to the point where we know what the timeline was. We
Mhm.
know when it was made available to us as far as information is concerned, when things could have been activated that would have protected the people of the United States of America, regardless of where it originated or how it originated. And yet we are at the point where yesterday we crossed the over 100,000 mark, where people have died from the virus or the
Mhm,
complications of the virus. And I'm
mhm,
saying that intentionally because originally we said people were dying from HIV. HIV is the virus that caused AIDS. So we say
mhm,
that people die from complications of it. So
mhm,
we see people that are daily dying from either the virus itself or the complications that this virus brings.
mhm,
And he knew this. He was out golfing and everything else. And
mhm,
we see where we have the world court where people are brought up on charges of
mhm,
mass killings. Is this anything that's even a consideration based on his dereliction of duty, his failure to respond, his failure to act in what was the best interest of the United States? Because his oath said to protect from enemies, both foreign and domestic. And this
mhm,
virus became an enemy. So, does his dereliction of duty equate
mhm.
um, to some type of responsibility for the 100,000 plus people who have lost their lives and the millions of people that these lives impacted?
Mhm. I would I would go so far as to deem it almost treasonous, in the fact that you had the information. Even if you had some question and some concern about the source and or the validity of the information, you had folks here in the United States. You had the scientist communities here. I think it was one of the anchors for MSNBC yesterday kind of went through a full timeline of when the
Yeah.
alarms were being sounded here. So even if you had some question about the source of that other information, or the validity of that other information coming from that other source, you had internalized processes, folks, and systems who were sounding the alarms December, January,
Hmm.
that this was going to be something that was significant, something we needed to address. Let's not forget, then we have to go back several years, I believe it is at this point, when the team that was comprised to handle these types of things was completely dismantled and never put back in place. So, as far as the international treaties and things, I'm not an expert on those and don't know exactly what they say. But I do feel like you're exactly right. Based on the oath that you took as the president of the United States, you have certain obligations. This is one of them. And so for
Is
you
the
to
one.
go from saying, oh, it's just one guy, it'll be gone by Memorial Day, or whatever those words were. There's been so many iterations. I can't even keep up, nor do I want to keep up with his iterations
Mhm.
of foolishness. However, from saying it's one guy and it'll be gone soon, we're going to handle it, we're fine, to, well, if we can stay below 150,000 deaths, that's okay. No, because what you've essentially done is refuted your duties and you've basically sacrificed a good portion of the US population simply for your, I don't even know what it is. I don't even I don't know what it is. But either way, his ignorance, uh his selfishness, whatever those things are, they are all an absolute contrary to what he is supposed to be doing, which is navigating things that are going to be in the benefit and the best on the behalf of the people of the United States. And that's just not happening.
I don't know when that becomes criminalized. When and I'm hoping that at some point, because in the legal system, if if I do something in the execution of my job that results in the death of someone else, am I not held liable for that?
It would
Uh,
depend on, kind of what that looks like. So, if you are driving a truck and you're
okay.
on, the route and there's an accident that, happens and someone loses their life. Well, are all the mechanics taken care of? Is, all that, those other things that should have been taken care of by the company taken care of? Okay, fine. Now, are you personally doing a thing? Because if the mechanics of the truck are not taken care of and the axle snaps or whatever, then yes, that's the company's liability. Still someone liable. If
Right.
you, as the driver of the truck, are drinking or being irresponsible or negligent, then yes, you personally are dealing with that. And so it looks to me that the mechanics, the CDC, Dr. Fauci, all those folks who were sounding the alarm of the truck were in place and were okay. It seems like he, as the driver of the truck, was being negligent and more concerned about what was going to be beneficial for him personally than it would be for the country. Me, again, my 2 cents, my opinions are my own. I think that does fall into that space.
All right, so this is real quick, and we're going to I'm gonna kind of try and bring it in as best I can, but the emollients clause, because we talk about doing things that benefit you.
Mhm,
Now, if CC was doing trading, and
mhm,
while CC was doing trading, CC got a tip that that this stock was getting ready to go through the roof, and then CC began to invest in it, the SEC would come after CC
mhm.
for potential insider trading.
Yeah.
And based on what they find, if they can correlate my decision with this stock to the tip that I heard, it will
Mhm,
be considered white collar. I can be prosecuted, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
mhm.
My question is, why is the emollients clause not being addressed when we see and I'm trying to think of an inappropriate word, where we see the the money of the American people being desecrated. And I've gotten into this argument with someone um, who is a Trump fan, and they were saying, well, he gives back his salary. Well, you giving back $100,000, but by the same time, you're charging the American people 100,000 a day for them
Right.
being on your property. So,
Mhm,
at what point does the emollients clause become evoked? That
mhm.
this is insider trading. You are taking the money, you are fleecing the American government. Anytime the Secret Service has to pay $70,000 to your golf club to protect you,
Right.
come on now, you're
Mhm.
making money hand over foot. And so you can give back $100,000, but you're charging that in one day.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Um, a typical answer in a typical space would be that absolutely that would have already been something that's been dealing with. And I understand as far as, some of the other legislators who had some insider trader appearing things, there are some looking that's being done into that. Um, Again, where we've seen that there has been hand-picked, cherry-picked people put in place to prevent even looking into those types of things,
Right.
much less being able to execute. That is, again, something that I can't answer because he's found a way to insulate and isolate and protect from actually having people who are willing to do the job that needs to be done, in favor of making sure that he can pretty much do what it is that he wants to do, however it is that he wants to do it without any type of repercussion or accountability. What I am
So we
interested in, though, is that once he is out of office,
that's what I'm talking
um,
about. How this will play
there
out.
exactly. I'm really interested in exactly how this will flow, because yes, we understand there are statute of limitations and there are some of the protections and the immunities based on those particular actions that are taking on behalf of the country. I don't know that personal actions fall under that immunity that is held. And so I'm extraordinarily interested and hopeful that folks will vote, that we will end up with a new administration coming in January. And then we'll see whether, all these folks who are talking about all these negative things and all these issues and all these concerns and are so upset about the criminality as it appears to be, that's happening at the hands of the alleged president, what they're actually going to do about those at that time.
That's interesting because this is why I'm pushing, everyone, we need to get out there in November. We need to change the narrative. We need to have our voices heard. We need to let the power that we do have to be exerted. I'm not a fan of the looting and what's happening now, but I understand it. And
Mhm.
I would encourage people, you have more power than you know of just
Right.
by monitoring how you use your dollars. You can shut
Yes.
an economy down with
Yes.
using your dollars, but it requires intentional, complete coordination to make that happen and to see that impact. And to go out there and be, I think you said it earlier, you know, everyone doesn't get everything right, but we afford an additional 4 years of this? And my answer to that, Cece's 2 cents worth, is no, we cannot, because
Mhm.
this has gotten progressively worse. And
Mhm.
so we need to do something. I just want to, as our time comes to an end, I want to thank you again, uh, just for who you are, for bringing this discussion to everyone who has been a part of this discussion on today. Um, I want to have this forum where we can talk real, and we can interact with each other. So I do encourage everyone to go out to the email that was streaming and to make sure that you become a part of it. And as you see earlier, what we were doing, where we were putting some of the comments up on the screen. And so I'm just excited about this, and we're grateful that you participated with us today because it moved the conversation a little bit. And so for that, I'm grateful. This has been an amazing inaugural experience, and I am so
Yeah.
happy to have had my sister to share in that with me. And so, um, with that being said, as we draw to a close this time that we have that we're sharing together, I do want everyone to know that part of what the CC's 2 cents worth is a building or a catalyst to something that's very near, dear, and important to me, and that's the Living Love Foundation. And the Living Love Foundation has three main goals. It is to educate, empower, and excite. Educate our own about who we are and what we have the potential to do, both academically, professionally, and practically, to empower our own, to understand your mind is brilliant and to reach above and beyond anything that you could have ever thought yesterday, because today is a new day, and to excite you about the potential of what your life offers. So if you want more information, let me get that out. If you want more information on the Living Love Foundation, go ahead and send an email to CC's 2 cents worth, to be a part of that as we begin to build what I envision as being a place where people who are marginalized and disproportionately um, affected negatively in our community and even our world greater can come together and be educated, empowered, and excited. So the Living Love Foundation, I want you all to look for that because it's coming soon. All right, so we have to go. This has been an amazing, amazing, amazing time. Regina Hurte, I absolutely love you from the bottom of my heart. Anyone who knows us knows our relationship. And I said when you did what we normally, what you not gonna do. That is us. That's what we're not gonna do. And
What you
so
not gonna do?
what you're not gonna do. And so that is authentically who I am. That is authentically who you are. And this is why these birds here, these PYT birds, flock together because it's deep and it's real. So
Yes,
thank you
it
so
is.
much. I love you. I
Thank
appreciate you. To
you. I
everyone
love
who
you
tuned
as
in
well.
today, everyone who tuned in today, let me tell you, it just gets better and better. As my grandma would say, it get gooder and gooder. So make sure next Friday at 10 a.m. That you check in, because it's going to be an amazing time. Thank you, everyone, for everything. I love you all. We out. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.